Have you ever asked yourself, what just happened to me? Your chest tightens, your breath speeds up, you feel dizzy, confused, maybe even ashamed. You weren't in any real danger, but your body reacted like it was life or death. That's anxiety. And no, it's not just overthinking or being too sensitive. It's a full-body survival response that often feels out of your control. Hi, I'm a complex trauma and depression survivor. In this video, I'll explain one of the most important, but lesser addressed questions. What actually causes anxiety? From the perspective of someone who's lived it, who's shut down, spiraled, panicked, and slowly learned to understand it, support self, and find ways to heal. Because if you don't understand why anxiety shows up the way it does, you'll end up panicking about the panic, frantically trying random solutions, blaming yourself, or focusing on things that don't actually bring real relief. But once you understand what's actually happening inside your brain and body, you are no longer helpless. You can start responding with clarity instead of fear and begin to manage anxiety, both in the moment and in the long run. So please stay till the end of the video to understand anxiety in a way that most people have never explained before. Here is what we'll explore together: how your survival brain hijacks your calm, logical mind, how trauma wires your system to stay alert, often without you realizing it, the 4 anxiety responses and how they can mix together, the difference between stress, anxiety, and panic attacks, why anxiety needs different short-term and long-term approaches, and how empathy, not just logic, can begin to calm your nervous system if anxiety has ever made you feel like you're falling apart. Stay with me. This might be the explanation you have been waiting for. Stuck in survival mode. To begin, let's consider 2 important parts of your brain, both of which play a huge role in anxiety. Let's start with your primitive brain. Not the part that solves math problems or plans dinner, but the oldest part, the part wired for one thing, that is survival. A long time ago, for early humans, danger meant real predators. A sudden rustle in the bushes could mean a lion, a snake, or an attack. In that moment, your brain didn't have time to analyze or weigh pros and cons. It had to react instantly. To fight, run, freeze, or submit. And the part of your brain responsible for that instant reaction? It's called the amygdala. A tiny almond-shaped structure that acts like your internal alarm system. Its job is to scream, "Danger! Act now!" It's fast. It's emotional. It doesn't care whether the threat is real or imagined, only that it feels unsafe. But that's not the only part of your brain. You also have the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. It's the newer, more evolved part, right behind your forehead. If the amygdala is like a fire alarm, the PFC is like a calm firefighter with a clipboard saying, "Wait, let's check if this is actually a fire or just burnt toast." Your PFC helps you think clearly and pause before reacting. It's the part that says, "Okay, I'm scared, but maybe I'm not actually in danger." But here's the problem. When the amygdala gets activated, it sends a signal to shut down the PFC. Because in a true crisis, thinking slows you down. And that's exactly what happens in anxiety. You are suddenly flooded with fear, confusion, or dread, and your thinking brain is nowhere to be found. That's why you forget your words during a presentation, or you panic over a small text reply, or you spiral into worst-case scenarios without being able to stop. It's not because you are weak. It's because you are stuck in survival mode. How trauma wires your system to stay alert. You might wonder, but why does this even happen? Why does your brain sometimes react so strongly to things that don't seem dangerous now? The answer often lies in how your system was shaped by past experiences, especially ones that felt overwhelming, scary, or left you feeling helpless. Let's say as a child you reached out to pet a dog, and it suddenly bit you. Or maybe you were walking on a road and saw a terrible accident. Your brain doesn't forget moments like that. It instantly forms a memory equals threat shortcut, not just of the event itself, but of everything around it, the place, the sounds, the smells, the feelings. These become what we call triggers. So later, even if you are in a totally different situation, a barking dog, or just that same street, your brain might light up that old alarm again. But trauma isn't always one big event. It can be something that repeats over and over. And that becomes complex trauma. A parent who criticizes or shames you whenever you express yourself. Teachers or relatives who dismiss your emotions. People laughing when you made a mistake while dancing or speaking. These may seem small on the outside, but if they made you feel unsafe, unloved, or ashamed, your brain remembers that, and it starts scanning for anything similar, just in case it happens again. Over time, your nervous system stays on high alert, looking for danger, even when there isn't any. This isn't because you are too sensitive. It's because your system learned that safety wasn't guaranteed, and it's trying to protect you from ever feeling that way again. That's why even things like perfectionism can be trauma responses. If expressing your real self once brought pain or rejection, you may start believing, I must always be perfect, or something bad will happen again. And sometimes, this wiring shows up as flashbacks, moments where your body reacts as if you are reliving that past event, even in dreams or real life. Even if nothing dangerous is happening now, your system is still stuck in that old memory, trying to keep you safe. The 4 anxiety responses. When early humans faced danger, for example, a wild animal, their bodies responded in 4 key ways: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. These are automatic survival instincts wired into our nervous systems, and though the threats today have changed, the responses still live on. Let's look at how each one worked back then and how it quietly shows up in our modern lives now. The first is fight. Originally, this meant preparing to physically defend yourself, grabbing a stick or stone, facing a wild animal head on. Today, it can look like lashing out in anger, snapping at people, or needing to prove yourself or your worth constantly. Something like a person raising their voice at you, or someone weak, a teacher or manager scolding you unfairly, can ignite this reaction if your system connects it with past moments where you felt powerless or humiliated. The next one is flight. This used to mean running from predators, fast, far, and without hesitation. Today it can look like procrastination, disappearing from conversations, ghosting or blocking out people in relationships, obsessively staying busy, or an urgent need to leave any uncomfortable space. Even a tough conversation with someone you care about or a disagreement at work can make your body want to get up, walk away, or shut off your phone. Anything to avoid being overwhelmed. It's your system yelling, "This isn't safe. Escape now." The next one is freeze. This was nature's last resort, acting dead, staying perfectly still, hoping the threat would pass. Today it can feel like your brain just stops. You go blank mid-sentence. Your body can't move. Your brain can't make decisions. You are unable to even speak. Everything around you slows down or fades. It's not laziness or apathy. It's your body shutting down to survive what it can't escape. Sometimes, a sudden question in a group or a confrontational text or call from someone you love can make your system freeze before you even know what's happening. And finally, we have fawn. This instinct is often overlooked, but it's very real. In the wild, some animals submit or appease to avoid further harm. Ever seen a guilty dog that knows it's done something wrong? Ears back, nervous tail wag, trying to smile? That's fawning. In humans, it looks like constantly apologizing, avoiding conflict, or reshaping who you are to keep others happy. You laugh when uncomfortable. You agree when you don't mean it, just so they don't abandon you or react badly. Even when your friend is upset or your partner seems disappointed, you might instantly change your tone, hide your feelings, or bend yourself to please them, just to keep things safe. These aren't personality flaws. They are protective reflexes woven deep into your nervous system, and they often overlap. You might freeze and then fawn, or run and then rage. But the more you recognize these patterns, the more you can meet them with compassion and not shame. We'll dive further into these in another video. The difference between stress, anxiety, and panic attacks. Let's clear this up, because these words often get used interchangeably, but they're not necessarily the same. Stress is your body's natural response to a challenge or demand. It usually has a clear cause, like an upcoming exam, a deadline, or a difficult conversation. It's often short-term and can even help you focus or perform better in some situations. Once the situation passes, the stress tends to go down. Think of it like your body saying, "Hey, we need to act now." For example, you're nervous before a presentation. Your heart races, you sweat a little. But once it's over, you breathe again. That's stress. Anxiety is what happens when that stress response gets stuck, even when there's no immediate danger. It's longer lasting, more vague, and often doesn't have a clear trigger. Your body still reacts like it's in danger, but your mind doesn't always know why. It can feel like a constant hum of unease, dread, overthinking, or fear, without an off switch. For example, you wake up with a heavy chest, spiraling thoughts and dread, even though nothing urgent is happening. You can't calm down, even when people say it's all in your head. That's anxiety. And no, you are not making it up. Panic attacks are intense, sudden bursts of anxiety, like your survival system goes into full overdrive. Your heart pounds, your chest feels tight, breathing becomes hard. Your limbs may go numb or cold, and you feel like you might faint, scream, or die. It can come out of nowhere or be triggered by something small, especially if you have unresolved trauma underneath. It usually peaks within a few minutes, but can feel like forever. For example, you're having a calm day, then a small argument, sound, or memory suddenly flips a switch. You can't breathe, you feel dizzy, like the world isn't real. That's a panic attack. So how do you tell the difference? Stress is a real-life pressure with a clear cause. Anxiety is ongoing fear without a clear reason or way out. Panic attack is a sudden, overwhelming wave of fear that takes over your whole body. And here's something important. You might move between all three, or feel parts of each, depending on your history, your triggers, the situation, and what support you've had. What starts as stress can become chronic anxiety. What starts as anxiety can sometimes lead to panic. And for many with trauma, panic becomes the body's last resort to scream for help. Why anxiety needs different short-term and long-term approaches. You can't heal anxiety by doing just one thing, because anxiety isn't just in your thoughts. It's a full-body survival response, often triggered by a mix of memories, sensations, or situations that feel unsafe. Here's what actually happens in your brain. When a threat is sensed, even subconsciously, your amygdala floods the body with stress signals. Your prefrontal cortex, PFC, the rational part, shuts down. That's why in anxious moments, you can't just think clearly. It's not weakness. It's neurology. And beneath these reactions, there's often something deeper, an unresolved fear, experience, or wound your system has been trying to protect you from. So healing needs both. First, short-term tools to calm the brain and body right now, so you can start thinking clearly again. And then, long-term healing to slowly unpack and reshape the patterns underneath. First, short-term support, calming the alarm. When you are in the middle of anxiety, you are not in a place to think deeply or reflect logically. You are just trying to survive that moment. That's when you use tools to turn the alarm down, to calm your nervous system just enough so that your thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, can come back online, like box breathing, grounding exercises, holding ice, etc. These tools don't solve the root, but they stop the spiral. They help regulate, so you can return to yourself. Long-term healing, rewiring the pattern. This part takes more time and more compassion, because here you are not just calming the fire. You are learning why it keeps catching flame. Long-term healing means understanding where your patterns come from and gently working through them with safety, self-trust, and deeper reflection. This includes trauma therapy, inner child work, reworking trauma through journaling, etc. This is the part where true rewiring happens, where you stop living from old survival codes and start choosing how you want to live now. You need both approaches. We'll talk more about how to do both in upcoming videos. One helps you survive the moment. The other helps you change your life. And the more compassion you bring to both, the deeper your healing will go. So this was why anxiety happens, not just emotionally, but biologically. Understanding this is the first step. Because when you realize your brain isn't broken, just trying to protect you, you stop blaming yourself, and that creates space for healing. Empathy from others, and especially from yourself, plays a big role. In moments when your survival system is active, logic often can't reach you. But empathy can. A gentle voice, a kind presence, even your own voice saying, "It makes sense that I feel this way." That's what begins to calm the system. And once the alarm quiets, once the prefrontal cortex is back online, you can bring in understanding, reflection, and gentle action. You can combine logic with emotion to build long-term, sustainable healing. If you want to understand emotions even more deeply, I really recommend watching the movie Inside Out, both Part 1 and Part 2. The first one beautifully shows how our core emotions work together, and the second gently explores anxiety in a way that's emotional, relatable, and even entertaining. If any part of this resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts, your story, or even a small learning in the comments. And if someone you care about struggles with anxiety, maybe send this their way. We'll explore tools to manage and heal anxiety in upcoming videos. And whatever you are carrying, I'll be here.